at the center, at the shelter. Tragedy, I guess, is a better word. But and I know at the time what people were talking about, you know, the expansion and all that, and that was the whole purpose of the bond passing, was to have it expand in the Sugar Land city limits. The population has increased, obviously, and we keep wanting people to come move here, and the more people, they bring their pets, and there's a need here in our city limits, and the bond money, from my understanding, is for Sugar Land, not for the county. This was a city thing, and I feel very strongly that it needs to stay in here, and it's really upsetting, the more things that we see with the climate problems we've had. They were already overcrowded, they're already hot, they already have to double up outside sometimes, and I know they're doing the best they can, but the fact that nothing's happened yet is hard to understand. And when we try to encourage people that live out here to, you know, join in with us and speak up, because when you talk to them on the street, everybody supports this, but they aren't seeing anything happen, and nobody knows what goes on behind, you know, closed doors, even us, until we get here sometimes. So I really think that, you know, it's important. When I see someone has left, I can't count how many times in the last several weeks I've seen articles where animals have been left at dumpsters tied up because the shelters are too full. And they probably are, because nothing's being done. And I know y'all are doing the best you can, but I'm struggling to understand why this has taken so long to be resolved. The problem will not be solved by moving things away. I think if we make a better shelter, larger facility here for the animals that are in our city limits that we should be responsible for, not try to pawn them off somewhere else. I think it'll be more effective, and people, once they start seeing that we're going to be getting this in our community, they'll be more supportive. They're not going to want this bond money to go to some other town, some other county, and not county, but another area. And combining all of those is just going to multiply the amount of dogs and cats that are displaced already, which is going to be exponentially much more expensive. And the needs are now, so we need to figure out something, and we're trying to figure out, you know, we'd like to see something happen here in Sugar Land, because that was the purpose of the bond to begin with. That was what the citizens voted for, not to send them to be someone else's problem, and try and save some of these animals that people either just are not able to care for, or it's just too hard for them in their lives. And I don't want to see another one tied up to a dumpster dying because of heat stroke. So hopefully we can get something resolved soon in Sugar Land. Thank you.
The next one is Charlene Avery. Please state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Charlene Avery. My address is 4523 Topaz Trail. I would like to thank the shelter staff for getting the TNVR ordinance draft completed, as well as everyone who has worked so hard taking care of so many animals. This includes staff and all volunteers. Hopefully this past kitten season influx will be the last one. I'm also pleased to see the upcoming events with free microchipping, as well as that as a part of a new ordinance. These are two very important steps to help control the influx of new animals. After reviewing the shelter stats, I am concerned about the number of cats that are listed as having died in care or euthanized. In the month of July, the save rate was only 55%, average for the last 3 months is 71%. I'd like for Dr. Bender to address this just so the public can understand these numbers and why they are so low. Our save rate for dogs has been excellent, averaging 96% for the past 3 months. However, the public needs to remember that the majority of the past year, our shelter has been closed for intake for all intents and purposes. I'm also concerned about the very low number of fosters. 1 month there were 4, and another month there were 7. I know that the city has put out multiple requests for fosters and adopters to help ease overcrowding. The adoption rates are good. It'd be helpful if the person in charge of this would let us know as animal advocates, because we will do everything that we can to help get that out. And I do believe that the more engagement activities that y'all have coming up is going to help that effort. The needs assessment study was completed by Fort Bend County within a few months. The city of Sugar Land has been waiting for 1 year for conclusion on their research, and we're still waiting. The 2 things that we have mentioned previously were listed as top priorities for any shelter to succeed: great visibility and accessibility. When and how does city staff and council plan on letting the citizens actually vote on this? Are we going to get a vote? Sugarland voters approved a $6.6 million bond for an expanded shelter within the city of Sugarland. We did not approve nor vote on a regional shelter that would cost around $36 million, according to that study. The study also suggested it would cost around $24 million for an expanded shelter. I would like to emphasize once again that if the city leaders decide to build a regional shelter, whose SOPs would they use? Rosenberg has gone back to kill list after being NK for years. The city of Sugarland does not kill animals for space, never has, never will. I firmly believe that it will not be in the best interest for the city or the shelter animals if you decide to build a regional shelter that will cost more to build, more to maintain, more per intake, lose visibility, lose access, lose volunteers, lose adoption opportunities, and control over the SOPs, not to mention the potential loss
seconds.
of jobs. I believe that the city leaders should speak about these concerns and tell the public the pros of a regional shelter, because we've not heard one, and I've researched and I've not found one. We will be asking the city council these exact same questions. You move the shelter out of the community, you lose the community support that you need to support your animal shelter. Again, I just want to thank all the staff and volunteers for all the hard work y'all have done. Thank you.
Susan Ridley, please state your name and address, please. Thank you. And address. Name and address.
My name is Susan Ridley. I live at 2106 Dreamhurst. Like I've said at previous City Hall meetings, I don't like having to give my address because I don't think it should be public information because it's not very safe. I'm sure y'all don't want us to know which y'all's addresses is. Anyway, so good afternoon, Animal Advisory Board. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I appreciate it. As mentioned in the City Council meeting last week, I requested the financial information regarding the donation, and I did receive that information. Thank you, Jennifer. There are some questions on the spreadsheet as it mentioned encumbered funds, which is not explained on the summary. Can someone explain that to me? Are those funds that were donated for the building of the new shelter? If so, why are they used for general expenses? In the future, can you include both the city expenses and donations and those expenses so we can see the total cost of running the shelter? In addition, I am concerned about all this regionalization talk. The residents of Sugarland, not Fort Bend County, not Rosenberg or Richmond or Missouri City, voted for the 2019 bond. It is assumed that the bond funds will be spent on a shelter in Sugarland, not elsewhere. Assuming you do go building a shelter not in Sugarland, why do you assume you will still get $2.4 million in donation as noted in the 2024 city budget? It has been almost 4 years since the bond was approved. 4 years. This is the only bond that hasn't made any progress that was approved in 2019. I am disappointed. All these studies should have been done prior to the bond so the voters would know what they were voting on. Not now. If your committee decides to vote for regionalization outside of Sugarland, this bond should be voted on again by the residents of Sugarland. Your folks that are on the Sugarland Advisory Board, you're not on the Fort Bend Advisory Board. Also, I would like to know why this advisory board does not engage in back and forth with the attendees. You are an advisory board. And last but not least, the city employees should be listening to the residences. After all, we pay your salary, not Fort Bend or any of the other cities. Thank you for your time.
Christiane Galvani. Please state your name and address.
My name is Christiane Galvani. I live in Sugar Creek, but I'm reading the speech of Lynn Harpham, who lives at 4003 Brenner Court. She's ill today, so I'm reading her speech. For a year now, the Sugarland shelter has been treading water as the city manager's office studies the idea of regionalization. Despite the Herculean efforts of shelter staff and volunteers, there has been no significant change in the shelter's space or operations. This is not surprising in a city where the mayor and others seem determined to take animal services out of Sugarland and kick it down the road to Rosenberg to let the county manage it. I don't mean any disrespect, but raise your hand if you can think of any single service the county delivers better than Sugarland does. As another Texan, Dr. Phil used to say, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So we know what the future looks like if we join forces with the county in a regionalized animal service operation. This is not to say in any way that the county is not doing an admirable job with an extremely difficult job today. It is very challenging to provide quality services for shelters with large populations, as they well know. A regional shelter may be called upon to house 450 or more animals at a time. There are some things in life and in society that just don't work as well in a very large scale. Restaurants, Starbucks, a doctor's office, preschools are examples. Every Starbucks I've ever been in is well run. I wouldn't expect a Starbucks to efficiently handle 450 customers at a time, and that is probably why they don't build them that way. Today, if you lose your beloved pet, as up to 20% of owners will at one time or another, you will be beyond distraught until you are reunited. We should all be grateful that we don't have to drive down to Rosenberg every day and scan 450 kennels looking for a lost dog, because that's what it will come to if we regionalize. If you're terrorized by stray dogs in your neighborhood, you may or may not be able to get Sugar Land Animal Control to come out. If the regional shelter is full, which is most likely the scenario, and animal control doesn't have a place to take them, you may just be out of luck. If you don't like the idea of going to BARC to look for a lost pet, to volunteer, or to take a stray, you should be worried, because that is what regionalization will mean for us. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's anyone else who has not pre-signed up and would like to speak, now is your time to come to the podium and state your name and address. No one? Okay, move on.
Okay, thank you. Then at this time, we will consider and take action on the minutes from the July 12th, 2023 meeting. So is there a motion to approve the minutes as reviewed? Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor? The minutes are approved. And we will move on to workshops. The first will be review of and discussion on the animal shelter partnership options with Rob. Is Rob here? I don't.
No, he's not here. I'm
Dawn,
handling
you're
it.
going to do it? Okay. With Dawn's staff.
Do I need to go down there to do it, or do I? Yeah. There we go. Huh? I know, this is strange. Okay. Okay. There we go. Okay, so in this presentation, I'm going to go over the needs assessment needs assessment status that was done by Fort Bend County, kind of a high-level overview of that assessment, some next steps, and then a schedule update. So Fort Bend County put out a animal service needs assessment study on their Commissioners Court agenda on August 2nd. It included the full study with the agenda item. I sent that email to y'all on August 17th that included the link to the agenda as well as the study attached to it. The assessment is still under review and pending comments from Fort Bend County. Even though it was on the agenda to be discussed at that meeting, it was pulled from that meeting and not discussed. We have reached out to them to have a meeting with them to understand what's involved in that study, what assumptions were utilized in that study, and so that meeting is scheduled for this Friday on the 15th. We not knowing the assumptions and what was utilized to build that study, we do not think that that report is final. We believe there's going to be some back and forth with the cities where they obtain the information to create a better report at the a final report, I should say. So if you reviewed the study, it talked about existing facilities that are here in Fort Bend County, including Sugar Land. It looked at staffing levels, at animal levels. It had the building space by each entity. It then gave proposals. Again, the assumption is they just took all the information and created, well, this is what it would look like. But that is just an assumption. It provided site considerations in the county, some features that could be incorporated into a new facility. And then it also had proposals for a staffing plan and what those staffing numbers would be, as well as titles, as well as cost. So it had a couple of options with cost of what it would take to construct that facility. So it was just a lot of information that was compiled by reaching out to the existing sites, and then again, not knowing what assumptions were made to create the proposed recommendations, because as we've heard, each shelter has different service levels. We are all operated very differently, so it's an apple and orange. You know, you can't consolidate. There's not a consistent service level, and so that's why we have questions about this study and what they utilize to formulate these proposals and cost estimates. And so those are the questions that we want to talk to them about. And so, I mean, it's just very simple. Like our same next steps is we're continuing the research. We are waiting to have that meeting on Friday to see what additional information we get from them. What's their timeline? Are they, you know, like what's their next steps? Because we knew about the assessment, we provided information, but we weren't given a timeline of what their timeline and project goals are. So trying to get that information from them so that we can see how does that play into our timeline and our project and research. And then obviously we would come back to you and present those findings of our discussions with the county from Friday and in any future meetings on this study. And then obviously after it came here, it would go to city council as well. So we're just kind of in a holding pattern until we can get some more information on that assessment.
Dawn, question?
Oh, this sound, I don't know where to look. Who's sitting where?
We'll hold up our hands.
Okay.
Can you ask at that meeting, if you don't already know, there are two cost proposals. The first one was 2032. Does that mean it wouldn't be built until then?
Yeah, we only know what you read. Like we read the study just like you. We have not had any conversations about it. There are no conversations prior to them putting the study out. So we know exactly what you know. And that's what we're trying to find out is, here's your study, what assumptions, what's the next steps, is there a timeline? The topic was under their bond discussions. So they discussed the mobility bond, they discussed the parks bond, and then this was supposed to be that third topic. And so what's the thought on how you would even fund that, right? So we have a lot of questions too, and not many answers. And so we hope from the meeting on Friday, and I'm sure it will transition into more meetings. We won't get all of the information in that one meeting. And so it'll be a series of meetings to get a better understanding of what their plan is, their goals, and what their timeline is. And then Rob updated this schedule, and I didn't have a chance to get with him. So I think he just eliminated that special meeting that we were supposed to have to discuss the study because we don't have anything to discuss aside from letting you read it, which you all have a copy of. And that's it on that update. I'll take any questions.
I actually, thank you for sending us the study. I couldn't actually find it online to share with everybody else, so I don't really know if the public has given feedback on it.
So I also included the link to the agenda in that email. If you click on the agenda and scroll to the item, the study is linked under that agenda item. I just attached a PDF so y'all didn't have to go do the clicks. But in that same email, it did have the link to the Fort Bend County agenda for that meeting, and that link is on there.
Thank you. Based on, I do applaud how fast the county came out with that. I think their turnaround time was excellent. They started working and they finished it in 2 months, correct?
It was quick.
Something like that. It was really quick, so I appreciate that. I did notice, though, that for the spaces, as everybody here spoke up, we desperately need space for the number of dogs that was actually forecast in 2015, because we annexed new territory in Greatwood. The number of kennels that they have set aside is the same number that we currently have, which we currently really need the space for the number of animals that we hold now urgently. That's my comment. And just one more comment, just so the audience knows, legally we only vote to approve or disapprove proposed ordinances that go to the city. We can't actually vote on this or speak our minds vote as a board until we're brought a proposal. So just to second the audience, I would like that proposal as soon as we can, because I do believe it is an urgent matter.
Yeah, I think to comment on your on the timeliness of how quickly they turned that around, that's also a concern, because we went through an assessment and multiple people on this board participated in that when we did our own assessment. And there was a lot of work and exercises that went into creating that plan, because it wasn't just taking what we had and making a new one. It was, what are the service levels going to be? How does that impact the animal population coming in? We looked at data, historical data, not just a snapshot. And what we provided the county was a snapshot. And that's what they asked from all entities. And so even though it was timely, I'm with you and I appreciate that they put something out. My concern is what was put out and what all was utilized to make those assumptions. And that's why we want more information. Yes, Barbara.
I would just like to comment on what you said about the turnaround time. When we looked at this, we worked for a good solid 18 months every 2 weeks. And there was meaty data that we reviewed and numbers that we sifted through and things that we interpolated and just all kinds of work that was done. And again, that was every 2 weeks for about 18 months or so. And we had subcommittees going on and everything. So when we finally gave all of the information that we had gathered to a consultant for the city of Sugar Land, that consultant also came back with the bones of a plan pretty quickly. But it was really all that work that we did behind the scenes that made it real or not.
Yeah.
And so I'm with Dawn. I agree with what you said about the fact that they got consultants out there and they turned something around that people could see. But when I think of doing what we did for Sugar Land for the whole county, I don't believe that we have all the information that we need from all the different entities to do the same level of work that we did here in Sugar Land in preparation.
Yeah, I'm hoping this is maybe their first step in a multi-phased approach to looking at it, because, I mean, like it was said in the public comments, we would have to, if that was the direction that we all agreed to go, there would have to be multiple conversations of each service level and how that would impact the population coming in and going out, to then build that proposal. So there would be a lot more work that would have to go in with all those entities who are wanting to participate, to have those discussions, to get buy-in on what those policies are going to be, which then would drive the capacity. So I completely agree.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you, Dawn. Then we will move on to review and discussion of the Animal Shelter and Community Engagement Program updates by Cindy King.
Good afternoon. I'm not yelling at everybody. First of all, I want to start off with updates on staffing. We're continuing to fill vacancies. Our vet tech and ASO positions did get filled, and they have started. So Ashley Landon is our new vet tech, and Josh Workey is our new animal services officer. He actually came over from the streets department, so he was an internal employee. We have hired a new community partnership and program manager, Natalie Mendez, who will start on October 2nd. So moving forward, we will have her in place. And then the other thing is we do have additional kennel techs that have been approved to be part-time and full-time instead of utilizing the staffing agencies. So we're going to have additional kennel techs so that our staff will actually be able to take vacation, and we have somebody that supports that spot instead of management stepping in at that point. On the heartworm update, we have treated 49 heartworm positive dogs that have completed the whole cycle. There are 4 additional undergoing treatment at this time, so they will have their Darabont later on. To date, 6 of the dogs that we have had processed have tested negative on their follow-up. These are the only dogs that we still have available, so we have 100% rate of treatment. The others they've gone out for adoption or whatever the case may be, so we may not see them at that 6-month follow-up. So right now we have 100% success rate for the ones that are still in the shelter, and we've been able to test 6 months post-treatment. At the last meeting, we also reported we were waiting for the DEA licensing for our interlocal agreement. We had done some surgeries and we were waiting on the DEA licensing, and it has come through, so we now are we're keeping up to date with our animals being spayed and neutered, utilizing the interlocal agreement. And Dr. Bender's been able to complete a few amputations and dental extractions for some of our animals in addition to the spay and neuter. So the numbers are up there for that. So our 311 call data, as I reviewed, our call center gets our calls before they come into the shelter. And this is just the number of calls that come in on that city's 311 line. This doesn't include the after hours, the weekends, and some of them that actually roll straight through to us. So these numbers just show to date with these particular things that we've got almost 4,400 tickets to date. So it's showing you that the staff is staying busy, not just taking care of animals, but we're also responding to other inquiries and resident concerns outside of just taking care of the animals. And that the call volume has come down a little bit in the last month, but the other thing is, if you look at June, we had an extremely high number of non-resident or outside of area calls, so that has decreased.
What are they calling about, the non-resident?
So what happens if you're driving through or you're in the area, it pings 311. It depends on where that cell tower hits. So it's an animal services question, but it's not for us. So there's a lot of owner surrender. The number of owner surrender calls from out of area is really, really high. These are just the mapped calls for the ASO responses. This would be bites, scratches, cruelty, welfare checks, dead animal roadkill that we have to go pick up, the feral cats and stray dogs, found cats and stray dogs, if somebody's requesting a trap or if they have a trapped animal, or violations. That's all this heat map is showing. This doesn't include all the calls because the caller has to give a very distinct address to be able to put it on this heat map, but this does give us some good trends.
I have a question. The red marks that are shown here, do you have a general neighborhood or location or a little more information that you know is causing such a high number there?
A lot of these we have cat colonies, quite honestly. This is where we're looking at possible TNR programs in the future because that's where we have those are the majority of those calls. I can drill this map. To get it all on a screen, it's not as drilled down, but I can drill down to a street based on the call in the map.
Another thing, Barbara, that you'll notice if you look at not the top most populated location, but the bottom most populated location, it surrounds a highway, and we're commonly seeing ASOs are getting called out for running dogs. So one of our hypotheses is it's getting more common that people are getting desperate and dumping animals. And I mean, if the citizens, if the speakers are true on their hunches, people know that we take good care of our animals here. So unfortunately, we're seeing it's a lot of running at large. I will say that just from what I've seen with the field services officers. So
I have been informally monitoring Nextdoor and other social media for about 2 years now. And on average, we have 7 dogs that are on Thursday night it begins, and Thursday to Saturday morning, there on average 7 dogs have been, people comment that they think they've been dumped because the people in the neighborhood, nobody claims them, first of all, and then the people in the neighborhood don't recognize those animals. And when nobody can find them, even, or their owner, I've gone door to door in my area when there is one. And so if nobody can find an owner or recognize, then chances are greater that it's been dumped, as you mentioned.
Our resident dogs, we tend to get back to the owners. The owners come looking for them. We've had 2 this week that got picked up on the weekend that it took a day, but they came in and got them. So again, just a little more data. These are the specifically essentially dogs running at large and the feral cats. Plus, I did go ahead and put in those that we are not taking in because people are wanting to do owner surrenders. Again, heat map on drill down for just the feral dogs and cats found. And this is just 2 months worth of data. In June, 311 started breaking out which city is calling in or which municipality in our area is calling in. So these are the out of area responses that we're seeing. So as you can see, City of Houston is our biggest, people not realizing that they're not in Sugar Land, they'll give us a call. We do have other Fort Bend County calls, but we do get the majority of our calls from the City of Houston that are outside of our area. I'm out. There.
Hey Cindy, the Fort Bend County block, is that excluding the city of Rosenberg? Is that just if they didn't fall within a municipal jurisdiction, or is it all inclusive of all the cities in Fort Bend County?
I'm assuming it didn't fall in one of those This is 311 data,
Okay.
so I'm assuming it
outside
didn't
of-
fall into one of these buckets, or they didn't have anything definitive enough to put it into one of these particular cities.
Yeah, if I add those up, they don't total that Fort Bend County number. So if I keep the Houston number off, the other numbers do not add up to the Fort Bend County. So I would assume that they're separate.
So a community impact article just came out this week, but we had talked with them last month. At the beginning of last month, we had nowhere to put dogs or cats. All of our bangers were full, all of our hallways were full. Any intakes that we had were going in pop-up cages, dogs or cats. We didn't even have cat cages. So we had to halt loaning out or accepting personal cat traps. And we were only picking up juvenile or injured animals because we had nowhere to put any animals. Were we as full as we were in May or June for dogs? No. But in April, May, and June, when we had more dogs, we also had dogs outside, which we have not been able to do since mid-June. With temperatures in the hundreds, we cannot leave dogs outside. So we did push out social messaging last month. We pushed out social messaging. There were press releases, and we got some assistance from several rescues, which are going to be highlighted next. But we are definitely in a much better place right now than we have been, because right now, as of September 8th, we had 39 dogs in the shelter. We had 41 cats. We did have some out on sleepovers, some in foster care, but we are in much better shape even than last week. But over the past 30 days, we've had 42 cats or kittens that have been transferred to multiple rescue groups. And four of our dogs have been transferred out to rescue groups, in addition to people coming in and adopting based on hearing our pleas. And this just shows, like I said, 52 in April, 65, and then the 44 in July. When we hit August 1st, we still had 53, but the problem was we couldn't use our outside kennels.
Can you or Dr. Bender speak to the Fort Bend County, how they house dogs with no air conditioning?
They have the really large fans that they set to circulate air for the dogs that are outside.
But it doesn't sound like inside dogs that there's any air conditioning for kennels. Is that right?
Inside, like the building, so they have mixed kennels. Some of the kennels are outside, like 100% outside, and then some of them are 100% inside. They don't have the guillotine doors that we do. So the ones inside, yes, are air conditioned, but the ones that are 100% outside obviously aren't. But for those, I know they have those big, like massive fan, like industrial sized fans that they sit, and they're running 24/7. But yeah, that's from my observations. So that's what they've done.
I had one thing I wanted to bring up while we were discussing the community impact article. It says in March, the Sugar Land Advisory Board adopted new policies on euthanasia and sterilization, stating the shelter won't consider euthanasia based on alleviating shelter capacity. And just while we're all here, I just wanted to clarify that's technically true and that we did adopt the new policies. However, we have not, as a board for 10 years now, we have not euthanized based on shelter capacity. I just wanted to clarify that. I just wanted all of us to clarify that it has been a policy for 10 years as the Sugar Land Way for this board that we recommend that we do not euthanize based on capacity.
Correct. So this slide, we need a medical foster. We have put out several pleas, and so I am coming here to put out a further plea. This girl was found on August 30th and appears to have been hit by a car. She does have a pelvic fracture. She's got some road rash that is healing well, but she needs to be on cage rest through October 11th, probably to about 25th, somewhere in there, just for healing purposes. She is allowed leash walks, but she can't be running loose. She can't be out loose on her own. She can go out and go to the restroom on a leash, and then she's got to be on cage rest. She does need, she's going to need some physical therapy as we move forward. She's super sweet, and she's all beagle, and by that I'm saying she loves to be loved on. But anyway, right now she is being caged in a pop-up kennel in our ASO's office. So I am putting out a broader plea for a medical foster for her.
How does she do with other dogs?
Yeah, she can't really interact with other dogs because
Right.
she's got to stay contained.
But even so, I mean, if she's in a house with other dogs, is
She hasn't.
stressed by other dogs being near, or?
So the one thing we did find when we put her in another dog, and we had her in another room with another pop-up, I think she wanted to play too much, so she was stressed. So. And I just want to do a follow-up on our ringworm outbreak. And so thanks to Dr. Bender's strict guidelines and treatment protocols that our staff followed within our ringworm area, we are down to one cat currently being treated for ringworm. And the left picture there is what he looked like when he came to us on July 1st. The other two pictures are the same cat that I took on Monday. So he is healing tremendously. I think he's just got some spots on his nose, eyes. So as you can see, his whole body was covered in it. So he's healing very well, but he is our one remaining ringworm cat. And hopefully he'll get cleared before too long. But it's all eyes. It's very limited on where he's still got it. So here's just a couple of data slides. And this is our overall intake versus outcome for the dogs. And yes, our August intake numbers were down because we were only able to pick up juvenile or injured animals because we didn't have any capacity to house them. So we could not bring them in. So that number did not go up. And then there's a deeper dive into what the outcomes were for the dogs. So another issue we have had this summer is dumping. We have signs posted on our property that we will prosecute, and it is illegal to dump animals and abandon animals even at our property. These are just some of the photos of the people and cars that have been dumping animals. The one on the left, obviously a very unique car to find, left a box of kittens right outside of Whiskerville. Dr. Bender was coming out. It was actually I think it was after 5 o'clock. Everybody had been out, and they got in and literally placed this box. That's how the box was found. They weren't in an enclosed box. If we had not been there, if she had not been walking out, they would have been gone. because they literally abandoned them in an open box. The middle picture was a guy who came in and dropped off these 2 kittens. And as you can see, this is not a bed that we put them on. This was a bed that was in a kennel that he left them in. So that was August 7th, I believe. And then the one on the right was somebody actually came at 11 o'clock at night and left this package on our door. That backpack, which is like a cat backpack, had a rabbit in it. And then there was also a gym bag, a closed gym bag that had 6 of her babies. So we got those out to a rescue group, but we have a huge problem with dumping. We are working directly with the police department, and we do send citations for these actions. They help us as far as tracking down license plates, and we will send citations for people who are dumping. But just giving you all a heads up that we don't just go out and get animals. They are literally dumped on our front porch. So on our cat data, our intake versus outcome, April through June, we had a lower adoption rate to the intake ratio because most of our intakes were too young to adopt out. So we had a lag on when they would be spayed and neutered and able to be adopted out. And here's a dive down into that, the outcomes, but also I just want to show you that there's significant increase in our transfer because we were able to get set back up with transfers to other rescue groups, which did have to halt during the summer because of the ringworm outbreak. Quick update on the TNR program. Since the first trapping, we actually now have 26 cats or kittens that have been spayed or neutered from the First Colony Mall pilot program. And the kittens have actually either been all adopted out or they have been transferred to Austin. I take that back. We do have 2 that are available for adoption right now, but the others have been either adopted out or transferred over to Austin. We are working on updating some ordinances that will include a TNVR program. We are also working on a Best Friends grant that's going to hopefully help fund that program once the ordinance changes are adopted. So you have the Best Friends reports, and then one of the things I want to go ahead and address that was asked about was the died in care. On our kittens, we don't triage. We take sick kittens. We take litters of bottle babies. And when you're taking those, we don't know their history. We don't know why they don't have mom. Did mom dump them because they were sick and she knew they weren't going to survive? But the other thing is, once a cat hits that second litter isn't going to be as healthy because mom's given what she's had to that first litter. So once you hit that July, August, and this is into the second litter that mom's having, she doesn't have the nutrients because she hadn't had time to reestablish since that first time. The other thing is, once that second litter hits, now we're having to, some of these cats, the kittens, we're having to wait 10 to 12 weeks before they even make weight to be able to be spayed and neutered because they're smaller. And it's taking them longer to gain weight, whereas before it would have been 8 weeks and they'd be at weight. And some of them are 10 to 12 weeks and still struggling to make weight as far as that goes. So hopefully, Charlene, that answered some of your questions on that. But because we do not triage, we'll take it all, and we take sick cats. That's so.
A little bit to add too on that, Cindy. I'm glad you touched on that. This particular kitten season was pretty difficult, and I lost one of the best vet techs I've ever had working for me. She, dang girl, went and got herself promoted. So we had actually been searching for a veterinary technician since May. And if you were paying attention, looked at all those graphs, everything started climbing high in May. With high intakes, we have higher rates of illnesses. As Cindy touched on, we had that massive ringworm outbreak, and that brought secondary changes. As she mentioned, we couldn't transfer. We had to close movement and stop movement to address the situation. So without a veterinary technician, that takes away one set of my eyes. And additionally, I was also performing surgeries too, sometimes twice a week at Fort Bend County, which takes me away from the shelter, for 1 or 2 days a week, meaning I'm only there 3 or 4 days a week. So even though I was doing my best to pass eyes over every single animal, and kitten disease is funny too, because a lot of them there's no testing for, like for kitten pan-Luke, for example. That's what comes up to mind, because that most commonly in my experience is what causes sudden death in kittens. And it's very frustrating too, because it's very hard to diagnose. But that disease, we're actually dealing with it with the litter we have right now at the shelter. But one of the most common clinical signs of panleukopenia, the panleuk virus, is sudden death. And they're literally bouncing around the walls of their kennel. And so I pass by and I'm like, okay, like your poops are firm and you're eating well and you're looking great. And then we come in the next morning and find that they've passed away. So it definitely hit us hard this summer. And I think it was kind of the perfect storm of, while we had the relief veterinary technician services, it's a new face every day. So that qualities can vary sometimes. And I will say we had a lot of new kennel staff, so training them to decrease the spread of disease within the shelter. That's something that we've worked on, is training and educating them. And I'm really proud of the kennel staff, especially, that we have now. Paige has worked diligently with them directly to ensure that they follow the cleaning processes step by step to minimize disease spread. And now that we do have our lovely new vet tech, whose name is also Ashley, because we have no originality, the good news is that as soon as animals hit the building, they're vaccinated. Part of this is a personal hunch, but I think delayed intake vaccination may have played a role in the increase of deaths. But the thing is too, when you're young and you're in the shelter, you don't even receive vaccines until 4 weeks of age. So
they weren't. Some of them weren't even old enough anyway.
Exactly. So when it's I liken it to a human hospital in that it's a cluster of all the sickest patients all in one small area. We definitely, it hit us hard, but the ones that showed they were sick, we administered treatments to the best of our abilities. But I'm betting that if you looked at some of the kitten records, it was nothing, because they were fine. And then the foster reported that they passed away overnight. So it definitely hit us hard. But I observe everybody I do clinical rounds every morning, first thing. And now we do have the full-time technical staff as well to assist me. So that was.
I, like my others, feel very awkward not talking to y'all, but we'll go with it. Hopefully the mouse is a little kinder to me, but it doesn't look like it. Okay. Y'all just use that.
Find it when it's down there and just leave it.
Okay. So I'll start out. This is my last presentation to you. As you heard, my replacement is beginning on October 2nd. Her name's Natalie. I think you'll find her more than qualified and very exciting to work with as well. So just to give you some updates from when we last met, the bunnies that Cindy indicated earlier, we were able to get them all transferred to rescue that actually handles rabbits, as we don't have that anyway. You might have seen, if you came by the shelter during the summer, we had a college intern. She helped us make over 200 social media posts, which saved me a massive amount of time. They were super cute, and she actually got a lot more skilled as she continued. And so this is just an example, but she's back in Florida enjoying her life. We actually in this room last Friday, we offered a free event for the public. We started with shelter staff to make sure they saw it, and then expanded that to local shelters nearby, and eventually to the general public. So during this documentary, it was a little bit more heartfelt. I should have known better, but if you were like me, you had a good cry. But essentially, these two women are founders of Houston Pet Set, which is another Houston-based rescue that actually does a lot of philanthropy. And so they help other rescues. And so they created this documentary. It's filmed in Houston, so you can actually find it online. We purchased the DVD, so if we want to host it in the future, we can do that as well. But definitely a tearjerker, but educational. As of yesterday, actually on the 11th, I went yesterday to the mall, and we now have a famous boy. Duncan is our first ad in First Colony Mall. If you go to the food court, there's a giant, larger-than-life photo of him. He's still available for adoption, but there's also a QR code so people who go by can scan and see pets that we do have available directly from their phone. So we're trying some new strategies with advertising and really trying to increase awareness for the shelter in regard to even just local citizens or a place that people tend to go to, because malls are definitely popular for people coming in and out. And actually, when I went, it was one of the more prime spots in the mall, so I had to ask a kind family to move over so I could take a photo for you. As far as moving forward, we did halt a lot of events, honestly, because the heat was so bad. It's stressful for the animals, for the workers, and so we're getting back into the season of everything is happening on top of each other all at once. Even though I will not continue as the actual community partnership program manager for these events, I will still be there as a volunteer, as one of y'all. And they're really exciting and great opportunities for us to try to move animals into their forever home. So one we're doing this Friday, I believe it's the city's first time ever doing parking day, but this is an opportunity for us to just, again, raise awareness for the shelter itself. Our current plan, unless we get rained out, because I know it might rain now, which would be good. But either way, we're still going to participate, and hopefully we'll have a couple of dogs we can cycle through as needed if it does end up being a little bit hot. But this is just something that the whole city's getting involved in, where it'll be at Town Center if you want to stop by. It will be between 11 and 2 for the public. Our next adoption event, we actually had this scheduled for September 2nd, and it gave me quite a panic to realize it was supposed to be like 110 degrees. We started planning this event in, I believe, April, many months ago, before we knew this would be a heat dome, horrible summer for animal welfare. And so the closer it got, the more anxiety I was getting, like, we can't do it because we don't want to injure our animals, let alone having people come out to that type of event, because this is an outdoor event at Constellation Field. So we were fortunate we were able to get this rescheduled for October 15th. We hope you, your families, everyone can join us. We actually did extend the offer similar to the mega adoption event we had in December that Fort Bend County hosted. We're hosting this, but also inviting Roseburg, Fort Bend, and then Missouri City and Stafford if they choose to join us. I did secure, as of yesterday, a professional photographer who's going to come do free adoption photos for us. And then we also have a high school student. She's kind of behind the scenes. This is not well known, but she's designing enamel pins for us. And so she'll have a booth at this event as well. So essentially this will be 10 to 2. It is on a Sunday now, which is a little bit unfortunate. It can't be on a Saturday due to booking and then trying to reschedule this event, but we still think this will be a great opportunity. So we hope you all come by. Paige, I'll give her credit. She named it Fall in Love because we're desperately hoping it feels like fall. All right, the next event, this again is another Parks Department event that we're joining. It makes sense. It's at Palm Springs Dog Park, and it's their version of Yappy Hour, not to be confused with our volunteer Yappy Hours that are purely social. This is a dog-centered event, and we're participating where we are offering free microchips from a Petco Love grant that we secured. I believe we're taking 200 chips with us, but we do have free microchips for animals that are attending that are not already chipped. So we'll have some staff members who are attending this, and it's again, free. They're going to have, they said, food and drink, which is secret code for adult beverage. They're having other fun-filled activities, and we're going with the intention of doing a microchipping station. So this will be Thursday, October 19th. It's after hours, so it's starting at 5:30, but this will be a Thursday evening event. We're beginning the second annual Petco Love Mega Adoption. And when I say mega, I mean last year they got about 1,400 animals adopted. So this is truly the biggest event we could possibly put our efforts into. And when Cindy and I had the call for updates last Friday, we were surprised to hear some of the extra duties, including Thursday, we have to have people there to help set up all 1,500 kennels. On Friday, we will begin taking animals, which will spend 1, potentially 2 nights there, because logistics-wise, they just have to be there because we won't be able to move them back and forth. So we will definitely need our volunteers for this. This is like everyone helping each other out. And so this is a great opportunity for us to move any animals we possibly can. This is truly an adoption event, not an event where we just happen to have animals that someone might want to adopt. So this will be George R. Brown Convention Center downtown, and this will be Saturday, October 21st, as well as the 22nd, 10 to 5. If you're a night person, after the event ends, we have until midnight to break everything down and get it unloaded. So go ahead and caffeinate yourself.
If I could make a comment on the mega adoption
absolutely.
event from last year, a lot of the volunteers from the shelter, especially the dog walkers, they were like, oh, that sounds awful. I don't want to go down there. They were afraid of what kind of people they would see adopting our dogs and this and that. And I worked one day down there, and I will tell you, they're normal people coming to what they have to pay to get in. It's not some, strange people. They're normal people. They're lined up ready to get in the event. They have to pay to get in the event. They were great people, and it's a good way to see, especially if you're whether you're a dog person or a cat person or whatever, and you have a relationship with these animals like a lot of us do, it's a positive to see them getting a home versus wondering and not being there. So I would definitely urge the volunteers to go down there because it was a good thing. I mean, and there's a big grass potty area for the dogs. I took a dog over there to potty, and if anybody remembers Beckenbauer, but he was a high energy dog. He got up on me. He was kind of all over me. I took him back in his kennel, and some people walked over and said, we want to see that dog you just had out. And I'm like, wow, somebody wants to see a dog that just practically climbed on me. It's like, you never know what they're looking for. And again, it was a positive, and I think from what we told, especially the dog walkers last year, they're like, hopefully they will realize that it was a good thing to do.
And that's a good point. So I didn't mention, so we do have our own sign up internally, but the actual call yesterday said that if you want to volunteer, they want that information directly from their website. So I'll share that so that you have the link. We are taking dogs and cats for this event versus Constellation Field. We're only taking dogs because it's outside. So this event, I signed up for 40 dogs and 25 cats. So if we have that many at that point, we will be taking them all as long as they're healthy. But yes, that's a great point. So yes, and not talk aggressive. Okay, some other things. We just last week secured the date. We're going to do an adoption event at Go 8 Zipline here in here in Sugar Land. So that was just scheduled for 11/11, a little bit cooler, and after the giant ones in October that are already going to take up a lot of time and energy. I'm sure by this point we'll have some more animals in the shelter, so we'll go ahead and take them for that. And then pending date, but we will have in December another mega adoption, and that again will be Rosenberg, Fort Bend County, Missouri City, Stafford, and Best Friends helping to run that one. So that one we don't have the date just yet. And that's what I have.
Okay, we will now move on to number 4, Director's Report by Jennifer Brown.
Good afternoon. So this is my first director report. As you all are aware, I took on the shelter as of August 1st. I am the director overseeing the shelter. Give you a little background on me. I am been with the city for 23 years. have a finance background. I was the finance director and budget director for many, many years. I am an animal lover. I did volunteer at the mega adoption event last year. I was there both Saturday and Sunday, and I can, ditto what Ellen said. It was very, very rewarding. I was able to bond with several dogs, and Sammy is still with us, and he was at the event last year. So I think he's the only one. Oh, and Bogart. I think those are the only two that are left that were there. But yeah, it was very rewarding. So I will be there. I'm very excited to be involved with the shelter. I have volunteered at the shelter since last year, and so looking forward to where we can take this. I'm also involved in the regionalization task force, so I'll be able to help out with that as well. So I'd like to start with just a overview of the donations fund, as Susan requested it at the council meeting last week, and so I was happy to put that in my report. It's not something we've previously reported to you. Just to give you an overview of this, it is basically an income statement where you have our revenues at the top. So this is year to date for fiscal year 23, which started in October and ends this month. So to date, we have brought in a total of $23,942 in donations. We've earned $4,412.67 in interest income, and then we have our Petco grant for $10,000. So our total revenues are $38,355. We are anticipating spending, and so to answer Susan's questions on what the encumbered is, so expenses are the funds have already been spent. Encumbered means we've entered into a contract or obligated those funds, but we have not paid for it yet. So they're spoken for, but just not spent yet. So those two amounts total right around $26,000. And then at the bottom line is the beginning balance for the fund was $143,092, and we are anticipating ending with $154,762 based on these figures. Now I'm going to note this figure is a little different than what you're going to see on the next slide, because the next slide was based on the projection in the budget. This is one that I just did this last week. So this is for fiscal year 24. What we're going to have appropriated in the budget that City Council is going to approve next week. We're very conservative on our revenue estimates. So obviously we're hoping we get in much more than $10,000 in donations, but we just built in $10,000 in revenues for donations, $5,000 in interest income based on where we're at year to date with our interest income coming in. It's wonderful to actually earn something on our money. We've had many years of not earning anything, basically because of the interest rates being so low. The remaining lines are basically just an estimate of where we think we might spend the money. We don't have a plan for it yet, other than we're utilizing the donation fund for things like the Constellation event. And let me just go back over here, just to touch on like what the expenditures were. So here we have our two expenses for the Petco grant. Jillian mentioned we have the DVD that we purchased of the For the Animals movie. We're utilizing the donation funds to transport our pets to rescues. This is not something that we would normally use tax dollars for. And then last fall we had planned on having our pop-up shop in November. That was canceled due to the weather, but we did purchase shirts and totes for those, and we're hoping to use those at another time. The adoption event coming up at October 15th at Constellation, we had to pay to rent Constellation Field. It's $5,600. We've paid 50% of it so far. We'll owe the rest prior to the event. And then Jillian mentioned the advertisement at First Colony Mall. So we've got a 6-month agreement with them, and it costs about $3,500 for those ads. And its pricing is based on a 4-week period. So we went ahead and booked that ad for 6 months. So we'll relook at that in after the first of the year and see where we're at. And then year-to-date, we've spent $2,600 on our on-call vet for our TNR program. So this fund is meant to cover things that are not normally covered by our general operating budget in the general fund. So we do have a policy that governs this fund, and it's meant to be the over and above things that we wouldn't normally provide.
Can you explain,
Yes.
Jennifer, why we pay for the Constellation Field event? Isn't it owned by the city?
The facility is owned by the city, but it is run by a private party, and so they have the opportunity to lease it out to for events. And we do get a share of that revenue, or the city gets a share of that revenue back through that agreement with the Astros. But it is they are operating it, so they are charging us for the use of it. Okay, so then going back to fiscal year 24, we have the budget showed a beginning balance of $150,967. That's where I note that that's a little bit different. I think we're going to end up not spending as much money as we had originally projected, so I think that'll be a little higher. We went ahead and allocated $90,000 of that, not thinking that we would spend the entire amount. We have flexibility if we decide that we need to do something or that we want to do something to utilize these funds. We can come back and do a budget amendment and just get city council approval for that. But it just didn't make sense for us to budget to spend all $150,000 of it, because we just don't have that much planned for it. But we are planning to do something like we got the $10,000 donation from the First Colony swim team. We're looking to utilize that to make some improvements to our fencing in the back play yard and separate it out and see if we can get some more space to basically split the dogs up so that we can have more dogs out there and avoid interactions. We've had some issues with them getting at each other between the fence, a couple of dogs particularly. So just things like that, looking at transports, promotional events. We're utilizing the donation funds for the pins that Jillian mentioned. It's about $1,000. These are going to be pins that I think that we're going to use when we get a donation of above a certain amount. We'll offer the pin as a thank you. They're really cute. Can't wait to show them to you. I just entered the PO this morning for that. So we'll end up, we can make adjustments to that. All of these funds that I've been talking about are totally separate from the new shelter donations fund. We have around $30,000 that we've received to date. Those are in a totally separate fund and have not been spent. So there's the balance of that one off to the side. Any questions on that? All right.
Can you talk about the new shelter donation fund? But how do you go about donating to that?
So we are able to take donations right now over the counter, and you can specify whether you want it to go to the operating so forth, or in quotes, donations fund, or the capital fund. And so we will put it in whichever one is specified. The other thing I do want to note on donations is we have been working with our Treasury group and Wells Fargo, who is our merchant bank, and our IT department to be able to accept donations online. It's been a work in progress since about this time last year, but we are very, very close. We are actually with our vendor, Paymentus, that when you go to pay your utility bill online, that's the site that you go to. There's going to be an add-on on the utility bill. So if somebody comes to pay their utility bill, they would have the option to make a donation to the shelter as they make that payment, or if they have another miscellaneous payment that they want to make online, and then also a QR code that will take them straight to the donation site. So that is something that's in the works. It's very close to being completed, and we can't wait to get that going. So been working hard on that for a while. So that's kind of the transitioning my finance to animal services role, because that was something I was working on before I moved over. All right, so then you all, I sent you copies of the very draft language on the TNR and microchip potential ordinances. I am going to work that through the subcommittee. And we also have, from staff, we've received a request on an ordinance for pet shops. We have one pet shop that is now operating in the city that we've received multiple complaints on, and our ordinance does not address pet shops in the city. So we feel like I'm shocked that it hasn't been an issue before now. I'm happy, but I think it's something that we need to address. So we'll be bringing forth some language on that. We've been researching other cities and looking at their ordinances and trying to come up with language that we feel works. But if you all have any feedback, please send that to me, and then I'll meet with the subcommittee and we can discuss that. What didn't get included in that draft language was any kind of implementation plan. We are applying for a grant for a TNR program. We do have the microchip grant from Petco, so we are looking to utilize some of those grant funds to be able to implement those programs. And if we do have a microchip requirement, obviously we will have like a grace period of, you have this long to get your pet microchipped. Our goal is not to criminalize not having your pet microchipped, but to encourage people to have their pets microchipped, because that's the way the pet gets returned. If they come in not microchipped, we have no way of knowing who they belong to, even if they have a collar on. A lot of times they don't have tags. So I'll be working with getting those meetings set up with the ordinance, with the subcommittees to have those talked through. So the idea is hopefully we'll get those drafted and we can bring those back to you for discussion at a future meeting.
In the drafts that you sent out, when you have remove in parentheses in front of something, I'm assuming that means somebody has already commented on it and you're taking that out or changing that in some way.
There's some additional cleanup language that we have in that draft that we've been looking at. Like, there's a requirement to have your pet tagged.
Yes, that's what
and the really important piece is that rabies certificate, not necessarily the rabies tag. So it just doesn't make sense for us to have that language.
Especially for cats.
Yes, yes. I've tried. I can't get my cats to keep the collars on, but they're, microchipping and I've got their rabies vaccines. So then there are some changes. I think it's House Bill or Senate Bill? House Bill 1750 that would prohibit us as a city from prohibiting livestock, basically. And so there was an order to the Texas Agricultural Extension Service to issue a handbook on the guidance. So for now, we're still enforcing that ordinance, but there is a potential that we may not be able to enforce the no chickens and livestock ordinance within the city limits. So, but for now, our city attorney has given us the direction to continue as we have always been enforcing them until we receive that direction from TEAS. Yes, Texas A&M. Yeah, it's the Ag Extension Service, right? Yeah. Yeah, I call it TEAS from my time there. So our next meeting will be November 8th. I think we should be receiving reappointments and we'll have the city council reappointment process through October. Is that correct, Tia? And then have the swearing in. So we'll have like our ethics training and all that coming up. And then the next meeting would be January 10th.
So we're appointing the new board. Well, everyone say yes. So we're appointing
almost everyone.
Yes, for next week's city council meeting on September 19th. And then in October, I think it's 17th, whatever that Tuesday is, we will do the oaths of office. But then that'll be the ethics training as well. So everything will get approved next week, and then we can start doing our oaths for your November meeting.
So that will be the second meeting in October?
Yes, because the first is National Night Out.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Hey, Jennifer, and this might be to Dawn. Once you have the September 15th meeting with the Fort Bend County assessments, are you maybe going to call a special session for us to hear what you find out?
It depends on what's discussed, because like I said, I think the one meeting is going to turn into 2, maybe 3, maybe 4. But we will call a special meeting if it warrants to have a discussion ahead of the November 8th meeting.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, then I will ask for a vote to end this meeting, or
I motion to end the meeting.
is there a second? Okay, then we will end today's meeting. Thank you very much.